From the candle-lit chapels of Ireland to the golden domes of Brazil, from the hidden shrines of Japan to the soaring basilicas of Rome, faith still speaks, though not in words. And it is etched into stone and sky, sung in the silence of prayer, carried in rosaries worn smooth by generations of hands. These are not mere decorations. They are the heartbeat of a love that has outlived centuries and crossed every border. Every nation that welcomed the Catholic faith gave it a new face. The rosary murmured in Filipino homes, the Black Madonna guarding Poland's wounds, the Christ of Rio embracing the horizon, the weather-worn crucifix rising above African soil. Tun, each image is a verse in the same eternal hymn, a story of suffering, grace, and hope that refused to fade. Together, they form a single masterpiece, a mosaic of belief stitched from light and longing, where every color tells of heaven reaching toward earth. And as we begin this journey through continents and time, we are not simply tracing art or history. We are witnessing how faith learned to speak in every language of the human heart, how the unseen became seen, and how the divine chose to dwell in color, stone, and song. Europe was the first home where Catholic faith took form in color, sound, and stone. Across its mountains and cities, belief found a voice long before words. Through the hum of bells, the shimmer of stained glass, and the silence of candlelight. Faith did not merely decorate this continent, it shaped it. Each carved saint and painted ceiling was a breath of devotion, every cathedral a heart that still beats centuries later. Among its nations, Italy remains the heart of Catholic imagination, where art and divinity walk hand in hand. From the Vatican rises the emblem of the Church itself, the crossed keys of St. Peter, gold and silver bound by a red cord, symbols of heaven's authority joined with earthly care. That promise is written in stone at St. Peter's Basilica, where Michelangelo's dome curves upward like a prayer caught in motion. Beneath it, marble saints stand eternal vigil, and the Pietà cradles humanity's grief with divine tenderness. Yet in Italy, faith also wears a mother's face. Across villages and hillsides, the Virgin Mary is not distant but near, a protector woven into daily life. She appears in frescoes that outlast kingdoms, in roadside shrines bright with wildflowers, in titles that reveal the centuries of her care. Our Lady of Loreto, of Pompeii, of Mount Carmel. Through her, Italy taught the world that mercy could be painted, that compassion could live in marble and song. If Italy gave the Church its reason, Spain gave it its soul. Spanish Catholicism burns like incense, fierce, emotional, alive. The Sacred Heart of Jesus, pierced yet radiant, embodies its spirit, love that bleeds yet never ceases to forgive. Each year during Holy Week, Spain becomes a living gospel. Processions wind through lamplit streets. Hooded brotherhoods bear statues of Christ and Mary through crowds trembling with reverence. Faith here is not observed. It is carried. The road that defines Spain's devotion is the Camino de Santiago, the pilgrim path marked by the Red Cross of St. James. For 1,000 years, weary travelers have followed it through valleys and stone villages, each step a confession, each sunrise a promise. That cross is more than a relic of medieval valor. It is the rhythm of the pilgrim's soul. Unending, unafraid, always moving toward God. If Spain burns with passion, France glows with grace. Her faith balances intellect with beauty, contemplation with art. The fleur-de-lis, shaped like a lily and dedicated to the Virgin, became her national halo. Purity rendered in gold. Carved into cathedrals and royal robes alike, it whispered that beauty itself is an act of worship. Throughout France, relics once drew rivers of pilgrims. The crown of thorns guarded in Paris, the bones of saints enshrined in quiet abbeys. These fragments turned cities into sanctuaries. Each relic told the faithful that holiness could live in human dust, that the divine could rest in what the world discards. At the heart of it all stands Notre Dame de Paris, her towers rising like prayers over the Seine. Her stones sing of centuries of belief. Her stained glass scatters light like scripture. When fire nearly consumed her, the world wept. Not only for a building, but for beauty itself, for the idea that something sacred can still hold us together. Where France offered elegance and Spain offered fire, Poland forged faith in suffering. Its devotion was born beneath invasion and exile, and at its center stands the Black Madonna of Częstochowa, a mother scarred yet undefeated. Hananon, her dark face, marred by a sword's edge, mirrors the wounds of her people. Crowned but humble, sorrowful yet steadfast, she is both protector and witness, proof that endurance itself can be holy. Outer far to the west, on Ireland's mist-covered fields, faith speaks in stone. The Celtic cross, blending Christ's sacrifice with the sun's eternal circle, stands as a sermon in silence. Its carvings knot together heaven and earth, hope and hardship. Nearby, a simple shamrock tells another truth. 3 leaves, 1 stem. The mystery of the Trinity growing wild among the grass. These symbols, born of wind and faith, carried generations through famine and loss, reminding them that even in the smallest things, God's hand endures. Then came the age of cathedrals. When Europe became the workshop of heaven, arches soared toward eternity, and stained glass turned sunlight into scripture. Artists spoke in color, blue for heaven, red for love's sacrifice, gold for divine presence. Every brushstroke was prayer, every hammer's strike a psalm. These were not monuments to ambition, but to adoration, the invisible made visible through human hands. When missionaries set sail beyond Europe's shores, they carried this inheritance. Crucifixes kissed by centuries, hymns learned under vaulted ceilings, gestures shaped by devotion. Through them, the symbols of Europe became the symbols of the world. Even now, faith still breathes in Europe's stones. Bells ring above Rome, pilgrims tread the Camino beneath Spanish stars, candles flicker before the Virgin in Notre Dame's quiet shadow. The continent remains a living cathedral. Its art, its earth, its air still whispering the same ancient truth. That beauty, when born of faith, never fades. Edouard, the story of Catholicism in the Americas, is a story of transformation. The moment when heaven touched a new world and faith learned a different language. Across the Atlantic came ships heavy with ambition, fear, and prayer. They carried more than explorers and soldiers. They carried a sacred inheritance. The crucifix, the rosary, the whispered Ave Maria. Yet once the cross touched these unfamiliar shores, it did not remain European. It absorbed the colors, sounds, and sorrows of a vast new continent. Here, the faith was reborn. It met the drumbeat of native ritual, the rhythm of African song, and the cry of the exiled. The gospel did not silence those voices. It joined them. In the heat of the tropics and the cold of the mountains, Catholicism became something broader and more human. A faith that could sing, suffer, and rise again. Every nation shaped it anew. Madonnas wrapped in woven cloth, crucifixes carved from dark wood, baptismal fonts hewn from volcanic stone. Across deserts and rainforests, the same message took countless forms. God had come not to conquer, but to dwell among all peoples. Nowhere did this meeting of heaven and earth shine more brilliantly than in Mexico, the beating heart of Latin devotion. On Tepeyac Hill, a humble man named Juan Diego met a radiant woman clothed in light. She spoke in his own tongue, not as a queen, but as a mother. On her image, the Virgin of Guadalupe. appeared on his course tilma, her skin the color of her children, her robe adorned with stars and flowers that carried both Aztec and Christian meaning. She was the mother who remembered the forgotten. Guadalupe became more than a vision. She became the soul of a nation. Her gaze joined oppressor and oppressed, rich and poor, believer and doubter. She stood at history's crossroads, a covenant between earth and heaven, between the conqueror's sword and the native's prayer. Centuries later, her image led revolutions and blessed graves. To this day, she remains Latin America's most beloved Madonna. Proof that faith, once born in pain, can blossom into mercy. Further south, Brazil rose as the heartbeat of the southern hemisphere's faith. Vast, rhythmic, and alive. Towering above Rio de Janeiro, the statue of Christ the Redeemer stretches its arms across the horizon. Not to dominate, but to welcome. Carved from pale stone and open to the sky, it is both monument and message. That love embraces the restless and the weary alike. For Brazilians, his outstretched arms are not a symbol of judgment, but of homecoming. But Brazil's faith is not confined to its mountains of marble. It lives in its people. It dances to the pulse of drums, in the songs of Afro-Brazilian choirs, in the candles flickering before brown-faced virgins painted with tenderness. Saints stand beside orishas, hymns mingle with ancestral rhythms. The sacred here wears every color. This union of Catholic and African devotion is not contradiction, but communion. A living proof that holiness speaks through every culture that seeks it. In the United States, Catholicism found a quieter but no less enduring voice, brought by immigrants, Italians, Irish, Poles, Mexicans. It took root in the humblest of places, parish basements, brick schools, makeshift chapels beneath tenement roofs. There were no grand cathedrals at first, only hearts that refused to forget. Yet from those beginnings, a new visual language emerged. Stained glass turned sunlight into theology. Blues for grace, reds for sacrifice. Crucifixes hung over modest altars like anchors of certainty. In homes, the Sacred Heart stood beside family portraits. A reminder that the same God who ruled the heavens also guarded their tables. Across this restless land, each immigrant brought a piece of the old faith and shaped it into something new. From Louisiana's gilded altars to New Mexico's adobe churches and Chicago's murals of Christ among workers, the symbols spoke with the same voice. In this land of reinvention, faith had not changed. It had learned to breathe freely. Across South America, Catholic imagery moves like a procession of hearts. In Peru, where Inca stones still support colonial walls, artists carve saints with the faces of their neighbors. The crucifixes here sweat and bleed. Christ is dark, weary, yet unbroken. Mary wears the woven mantle of the Andes, her garments a tapestry of sky and soil. During the festival of El Señor de los Milagros, hundreds of thousands walk together through Lima's streets, carrying the miraculous image of Christ that survived an earthquake. Their purple robes form a river of faith, flowing, unstoppable, alive. In Colombia, devotion glimmers through hardship. Churches rise at the center of every town. Their bells call the weary to begin again. The Sacred Heart adorns not just sanctuaries but homes, shops, even police stations. Faith embedded in daily life. Emerald rosaries, gold tabernacles, carved wood and flickering lamps. All tell the same story, that beauty born of struggle is the truest form of praise. Across this hemisphere, one symbol unites them all. The rosary, carried by grandmothers, whispered in countless languages. It beats like a second heart. Each beat is a bridge between the human and the divine, a thread that ties together mountains, oceans, and souls. Under its rhythm, steady, eternal. has carried generations through storms both spiritual and real. Anurum, the cross, too, found new meaning here. For native peoples, it echoed the ancient harmony of the four directions. For enslaved Africans, it became the sign of both suffering and deliverance, the assurance that their pain was known and sanctified. On the Caribbean shores and Andean peaks, the cross rose not as a memory of conquest but as a promise of communion. A God who shared their wounds and transformed them into resurrection. Through centuries of trial and renewal, the Church of the Americas learned to speak with both heaven's voice and earth's music. Faith became festival, color, fragrance, and sound. Dia de los Muertos in Mexico weaves prayer with remembrance, turning death into a luminous doorway. In Guatemala, Holy Week carpets of sawdust are laid like fragile rainbows, destroyed by the very processions that bless them. A fleeting beauty that mirrors life itself. In Cuba, Haiti, and Brazil, the Virgin has many faces, many songs, each one a mother's language, each one understood by her children. Faith here is not locked in cathedrals. It walks the fields with the farmer who crosses himself before sowing seed. It sleeps beside the mother's rosary tucked under her child's pillow. It rides the subway, works the factory, kneels in the street. And we do what? The Catholic soul of the Americas is tactile and intimate. Faith worn on the hands, sung through hardship, lived through hope. From Canada's frozen chapels to the jungles of the Amazon, from Manhattan's skyline to Cusco's cobblestones, the same light burns on every altar. Xicuna, the Virgin of Guadalupe, the Christ of Rio, the Black Christ of Esquipulas, the saints of the Caribbean. Each speaks with a different voice, yet together they form the chorus of one belief, that grace crosses every border. Here, faith that once arrived by conquest has been redeemed by compassion. The cross once lifted in power now stands in humility. The Virgin who watched over empires now walks beside the poor. The gospel no longer speaks a foreign tongue. It speaks with the rhythm of the Americas themselves. And when dawn breaks over Rio's outstretched Christ, when candles glow before Guadalupe's image, when beads slide quietly through unseen fingers across the continent, the New World still prays in the oldest language of all, the language of symbol, of light, of love that knows no border. At the world's farthest horizons, where dawn touches the ocean first, the cross arrived not as a conqueror, but as a pilgrim, carried on the wind, across storms, across centuries. The faith that had rooted itself in Europe, blossomed in the Americas, and endured through Africa now reached the East. A realm ancient long before Rome, where wisdom was written not in parchment but in silence, incense, and symbol. Here, Catholicism did not simply enter new lands, it entered new ways of seeing God. In Asia and Oceania, the Church met philosophies older than the creed, civilizations that found the sacred in mountains, rivers, and stars. The encounter was not always peaceful, yet when it was, it produced one of humanity's most beautiful harmonies, a faith that could bend without breaking, bow like bamboo, and sing in the languages of many hearts. Salmer, the journey eastward began with the Jesuit missionaries, those spiritual explorers who carried imagination as much as theology. Francis Xavier and those who followed him crossed oceans not with armies, but with courage, bringing crucifixes, worn books, and the conviction that grace could bloom in any soil. They wrapped themselves in local garments, learned new tongues, studied Confucius and the Vedas, and sought to speak heaven's truth in the cadence of the East. Many perished, others failed, but some planted seeds that have outlived empires. Across Asia, the symbols of the Church took on the faces and textures of their new homes. In one land, the cross was carved from bamboo. In another, the Virgin was clothed in a sari or kimono. Where European cathedrals echoed with Latin chants, Asian churches sang in Tagalog, Tamil, Vietnamese, and Japanese. The gospel did not silence these cultures. It listened to them, and through them, learned to speak again. Nowhere did this transformation shine brighter than in the Philippines, the heart of Catholic Asia. When missionaries first stepped onto its shores, they found a people already steeped in ritual, community, and celebration. Faith here was not a foreign gift. It was a rediscovery. Catholic symbols, the cross, the Virgin, the Child, became living members of the Filipino family. Among them stands the beloved Santo Niño of Cebu, the Holy Child who rules not through power, but through tenderness. Small and radiant in gold garments, he is both king and child, a reminder that divine majesty can dwell in humility. Every year, millions flood the streets in processions filled with music, flowers, and dancing banners, lifting the Santo Niño high as if returning the world to its creator. His smile has comforted a nation through centuries of joy and sorrow alike. Yet, the same spirit glows in Our Lady of Peñafrancia, whose image glides each year along the river in Naga, surrounded by flickering candles and cries of "Viva la Virgen." Her brown face and kind eyes reflect her people. Her mantle gleams like water catching the sun. She is both queen and mother, and her procession transforms the city into a cathedral of devotion. In the Philippines, faith is not confined to stone. It moves, sings, and breathes. It is a celebration that turns every street into an altar. Further north, in Vietnam, Catholicism took root in silence and suffering. Centuries of persecution turned faith into endurance, and out of that endurance came one of Asia's most cherished symbols, Our Lady of Lavang. Hidden in the forests during years of danger, small groups of Catholics gathered in secret, whispering the rosary beneath the trees. There, the Virgin appeared to them, wearing the ao dai, cradling the Christ child. She came not with grandeur, but with peace. Her image became the nation's quiet protector, a mother who watches from the shadows, sheltering her children in storms both political and personal. Today, pilgrims still travel to her sanctuary, their prayers rising with the smoke of candles. In Rome, the Lady of Lavang is more than a figure of faith. She is the spirit of resilience itself, her gaze linking the scattered Vietnamese faithful across oceans. If we're far to the northeast, in Japan, faith learned the art of concealment. After centuries of persecution, when Christianity was outlawed, believers became the Kakure Kirishitan, the hidden Christians. Churches were destroyed, missionaries killed, but the cross refused to die. It hid in family crests, disguised within cherry blossoms. It lived in the rhythm of lullabies and in statues of the Virgin shaped to resemble the goddess Canon. For 250 years, they had no priests, no sacraments, only memory. Yet when the ban was lifted, thousands emerged from silence, still praying the same words their ancestors had whispered in secret. Their story is one of the quietest yet greatest miracles in the Church's history. The Kakure Kirishitan remind the world that the strength of faith lies not in display, but in remembrance. That a prayer spoken in the dark can outlast persecution and time. In India, Catholicism met one of the world's most ancient spiritual landscapes and did not erase it. It entered into conversation. According to tradition, St. Thomas the Apostle brought the faith to the Malabar coast, planting its first seeds among the palm-lined shores. His followers were known as the Saint Taunt. Thomas Christians bore a symbol unlike any in the West, the Saint Thomas Cross, whose arms bloom like lotus petals, crowned by a descending dove. The cross rests upon the lotus, merging resurrection with rebirth. Christ's sacrifice expressed through Indian light. As centuries passed, Indian Christianity continued to weave its story into the nation's art. The Virgin appeared in silk saris, draped with jasmine, Christ was painted beneath banyan trees. Saints were carved beside elephants and peacocks. And in churches fragrant with sandalwood, prayers rose like incense and tabla rhythms became psalms. The cross here was not a conqueror's mark, but a dialogue, an act of mutual reverence between heaven and earth. Beyond the continent, the faith sailed southward into Australia and the Pacific Islands, where it met cultures that saw divinity in the sea, the sky, and the land itself. At first misunderstood, these beliefs slowly intertwined with the gospel until they moved as one tide. In Aboriginal art, Christ is painted with dots and swirling lines, his body radiating like the desert sun. The cross becomes a meeting point between heaven and earth, a constellation guiding the traveler through dreamtime. Mary is imagined as an indigenous mother, her child wrapped in woven cloth beneath the southern stars. Across the Pacific, from Samoa to Fiji, the Mass beats with drums and songs that rise like ocean waves. Crosses are carved from coral, churches open to the wind. Faith here breathes with the rhythm of the sea, always moving, always returning, always alive. And as the light fades over the Pacific, a quiet truth remains. Though the faces and forms may differ, their heart is one. The cross carved in bamboo, the rosary woven from shells, the Madonna painted in every shade of humanity. All speak of the same love that crossed oceans to find new homes. When in Asia and Oceania, Catholic symbols did not erase what came before. They transfigured it. The cross stands not above the East but within it, reborn through its wisdom and beauty. The Madonna, in every culture and color, gathers her children. Filipino and Vietnamese, Indian and Japanese, Aboriginal and Polynesian, under the same mantle of light. At the edge of the world, the cross still stands, not as a border, but as a bridge, joining earth to heaven, east to west, the human to the divine. And as the sun rises once more over Asia's mountains and sets upon the Pacific waves, its light reveals the same eternal truth. That love, once revealed, never fades. It only finds new ways to shine. Across centuries and continents, Catholic symbols have spoken a single, unbroken tongue. Older than empire, deeper than history, and alive long after words fall silent. From the catacombs of Rome to the mountain shrines of Asia, from France's stained glass heavens to the wooden crosses weathering the Congo sun, humanity has carved its faith into matter, turning stone, color, and song into prayer. These signs endure because they reveal what language cannot. They make the unseen visible, the infinite tangible. The rosary still slips through trembling fingers. The crucifix still guards the dying. Mary's quiet gaze still rests on the forgotten and the afraid. They are not relics of a vanished world, but the living pulse of memory. The eternal echo of a God who once walked among us and left his reflection in everything he touched. Every symbol of the church speaks the same truth in a different accent. The Irish cross rises through mist and forgiveness. The Eastern icon burns with eternity. The Black Madonna of Poland bears her people's wounds like a nation's heartbeat. Sri, the Virgin of Guadalupe, smiles with mercy born from suffering. The Coptic cross endures in the deserts of Egypt, while the Christ of Rio opens his arms above the restless sea. Together they form a constellation, not of stars, but of faith, scattered across the world, guiding the lost home again. Faith has never existed outside of culture. It breathes through it. Art and worship, color and sound. They are not adornments but the very language of belief. The Creator who shaped galaxies did not despise clay and paint. He sanctified them. Humanity, in his image, continues the same work, sculpting beauty into devotion. Every cathedral arch, every stained glass window, every trembling chord of a hymn is creation answering its maker in the only language worthy of him. Beauty, Culture gives faith a face. Faith gives culture a soul. In Africa, it beats with the drum. In Asia, it bows in wisdom's silence. In the Americas, it dances in freedom's rhythm. In Europe, it dreams in marble and light. The gospel never demanded uniformity. It listened, absorbed, and transformed. Every nation offered its art, its music, its color, and faith turned them into eternity. Even now, in a world drowning in noise and images, the sacred symbols still stand apart. The cross remains, not as ornament, but as axis. In its lines, suffering and glory meet. It still presides over hospitals and battlefields, chapels and alleys, reminding humanity that love is strongest when wounded. The Virgin, too, still stands among us, sometimes as a statue in the streetlights glow, sometimes as a picture above a child's bed. Her face changes with every land, but her eyes never do. They are patient, maternal, unafraid. She gathers what the world breaks and returns it whole. The ancient language of symbols, still lives in modern breath. The candles that once burned in cathedrals now flicker on screens. Artists sculpt saints in digital clay. Choirs send hymns through satellites. Pilgrims light virtual candles, oceans apart, yet their faith burns with the same flame that warmed medieval hands. The form has changed. The longing has not. The same impulse that led monks to gild their manuscripts now drives filmmakers, painters, and songwriters to seek God in motion and color. The church has always spoken through beauty, because beauty reaches where reason stops. In an age fractured by noise and division, these symbols call us back to unity. The cross sanctifies the body. The rosary steadies the mind. The Eucharist gathers the heart. Together they teach us that holiness is not an idea, but a presence, one that draws the soul outward, from isolation into communion. If one could see the world as heaven does, it might appear as a single cathedral. Its floor, the earth, its ceiling, the stars. Millions of small lights flicker within it. A pilgrim kissing St. Peter's foot in Rome. A Filipino child lifting the Santo Niño in song. A Congolese choir clapping in rhythm. A Maronite monk lighting his lamp before the cedar cross. A hidden Japanese family whispering a prayer in the dark. Each act, each symbol, each heartbeat joins the same silent liturgy. A prayer vast as creation itself. At the center of this living language stand two symbols that speak all others, the cross and the Madonna. One reveals love that bleeds, the other, love that endures. The cross stretches between heaven and earth, the meeting point of agony and glory. Beside it stands the mother, not a rival, but a mirror, her yes turning human fragility into divine possibility. Together they form the grammar of redemption, God reaching down, humanity reaching back. Through their eyes, the world becomes sacrament. The sea becomes baptism, the sunrise a resurrection, the poor a reflection of Christ's face. The ordinary becomes holy because grace hides in everything that loves. This is the vision Catholic imagination refuses to lose. The belief that creation itself still hums with the sound of God. Faith, unbound by geography or color, beats as one across the world. Whether sung in Latin or Swahili, painted in ink or carved from coral, its symbols carry the same truth, that divine love took flesh and still walks among us. The Church's vast diversity is not a division, but a symphony held together by sign and symbol. The cross that redeems, the Virgin that consoles, the saints that guide, the beauty that reveals. And as history continues to unfold, these signs will not fade. They will speak when voices fail, endure when empires crumble. They will whisper to the future what language cannot say, that love is stronger than death, that beauty is a form of truth, and that hope once kindled, can never be extinguished.